Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. As you can see, I'm in yet another different location today. Just so you know, you might have grown accustomed to the traditional Watchman studio where we were every day for a long, long time. In recent weeks, you may have noticed we're moving around a bit. That's because we've got some very big plans in the work, folks, for 2024, or in the works, I should say. So bear with us, please. And I appreciate you all rolling with us and rolling with the punches as we kind of switch around our look, and we're in offices and we're here and there and we're everywhere the past few weeks. Believe me, there is a method to our madness and to the various looks. We will be settling, trust me, in an awesome new studio very soon. Look for it in the new year. So in the meantime, we're just getting some growing pains out and literally moving around, but you'll see where it all leads, and it's going to be good. I just want to say that right away, because people have been kind of leaving comments. Hey, where are you today? Are you on the road? So it will all make sense very soon. I'll just say that. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you here with us. And my trusty producer, Daniel, just reminded me today is December 7th, and that means it is the 82nd anniversary of Pearl Harbor, the Pearl Harbor attacks here in the United States. And I hope the young people, I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, I hope I'm going to ask them after school, as a matter of fact, today, I hope they are learning today about Pearl Harbor and why this date is so significant for Americans like myself. But in Israel, it's also significant. Today is December 7th, which means it's 2 days after October 7th. Today is the 2-month anniversary, if you could use that word, which usually has a positive connotation, but it's been 2 months since the horrific massacre of October 7th, when Hamas terrorists invaded southern Israel and slaughtered some 1,200, mostly civilians, in what many are calling Israel's Pearl Harbor, Israel's 9/11. 2 months to the day today, December 7th. And that's quite a place to start, because we're getting some very interesting news, some would say even surprising news. And this is why it's surprising. When you think of Islamic jihadists, you don't always think of them laying down their arms and surrendering. Why do I say that? Because literally they have suicidal tendencies and suicidal intentions. They want to be, quote, martyred. So a lot of times they'll go out in what they consider a blaze of glory and perhaps go out as a suicide bomber or something to that effect, but not always. We saw ISIS fighters surrender in large numbers in Iraq not too long ago, and now we have reports of Hamas jihadists surrendering. Now, I'm going to pull this up just straight from my phone. Pardon me as I look down for a minute. I want to quote it accurately from the Times of Israel. And this is what they are saying about Hamas fighters surrendering in northern Gaza, as the IDF, look, is really just making tremendous gains, as we reported on yesterday's live stream. Tremendous gains to the north of Gaza, to the south of Gaza, and throughout, including in the heart of Khan Yunis, the Hamas stronghold in southern Israel. But here's what the Times of Israel was reporting just a short time ago. Dozens of Hamas terrorists surrendered to Israeli forces in northern Gaza on Thursday. The group of Hamas jihadists turned themselves in after being pushed back by the advancing Israel Defense Forces near Jabalia, the Times of Israel reports. Now, Jabalia is a major, one of the last remaining Hamas strongholds in the north that Israel is attempting to pacify. Israel's local Channel 13 showed images of the surrender, which featured dozens of men, Hamas terrorists, lined up on a street, sitting in rows with their hands over their heads. And the Times of Israel actually shows the photos. Many of the men were stripped to just their underwear as the IDF troops lined up others to proceed farther down the closed-off road. In one clip, the Hamas members could be seen in the back of an Israeli military vehicle. And on the 2-month anniversary of the October 7th massacre, what a turn of events, folks, because if you remember the footage from October 7th, we saw Israeli civilians and Israeli soldiers who were kidnapped, captured out of southern Israel. They were in the back, if you remember, of Jeeps and golf carts and motorcycles and Hamas vehicles. Now we have Hamas members in the back, captured, not kidnapped, captured after surrendering in the back of an Israeli military vehicle. Funny how that all turned around just 2 months later. Channel 13 in Israel also reports that more than 100 Hamas fighters turned themselves in. That is the largest group to surrender to the IDF since Israel began its incursion into the Palestinian enclave. And one of the men was, let's see, wow, okay, senior Hamas leaders saying it's not legit, it's not credible, etc., which is not surprising, obviously. So reports coming out of the region that at least 100 Hamas fighters in a Hamas stronghold in the north, if you're just joining us, have surrendered to Israeli forces on the two months to the day of the October 7th massacre. And folks, look, you have to hope that they surrender en masse, right? That this becomes just a total, like we saw, I compare it. Do you remember the first Gulf War in 1991, where you just saw just thousands upon thousands of Saddam Hussein's troops just surrendering to U.S. and coalition forces? We're hoping for a repeat of that, obviously, in Gaza. But to be frank, I don't know how likely that is, because, again, they want to go out in a blaze of glory, and they believe if they blow themselves up and kill themselves and die fighting the Zionist entity, that they'll go to heaven, that they have easy paths to be with Allah. That's the ideology and the mindset of Hamas jihadists. Now, perhaps the ones who are younger, who have just come on board to this Hamas cause because it was the thing to do in Gaza, they're not maybe perhaps true believers. They'd be much more, I think, likely to lay down their arms than would the true believers, the true jihadists. So we shall see. But to me, that's an encouraging signal. Hey, the more Hamas terrorists who surrender, the shorter this war, the shorter this campaign is, and the more Israeli and Palestinian lives are saved at the end of the day, the shorter the war is. So, hey, look, I think if Hamas didn't know by this point, folks, that Israel means business, they surely know now, because it has been a lightning offensive since that truce ended, that mini ceasefire 1 week ago tomorrow. It's been about 6 days. It was a week break from fighting, a week-long break from fighting, and then that truce ended last Friday. And hey, we talked even here in the live stream about the possibility of Israel losing its momentum. It's made great gains in its offensive in Gaza since October 7th. I was concerned personally that that momentum would be broken, and yet it's been anything but. As I said, a lightning offensive in the south now. Northern Gaza largely pacified. There are still some strongholds and holdouts that the IDF is engaged in fierce fighting in the north, no doubt. But now they've encircled Khan Yunis in the south. And why is that important? Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday that Israeli forces are closing in on Yahya Sinwar. Now, he is thought to be, I should say, hiding, cowering in the tunnels beneath Khan Yunis, which is the largest city in southern Gaza and the second largest city behind Gaza City in the Strip. So closing in on Sinwar in Khan Yunis. He is the leader of Hamas in Gaza. He's the top dog in Gaza. If he is taken out, you have to think, folks, that will have an effect on the morale of Hamas. And this footage today and these photos of Hamas fighters surrendering, large numbers of them, you have to think that's going to have an effect on morale as well. And this lightning offensive by the IDF, the momentum has not decreased by 1 centimeter since hostilities commenced last Friday, which, by the way, just to make clear here, it was Hamas that broke that ceasefire. Hamas not only carried out a deadly terror attack in Jerusalem 1 week ago in which 4 Israelis were killed, but on Friday, December 1st, Hamas launched rockets into central and southern Israel. So let's remember not only who broke the ceasefire, as the world gnashes its teeth about the ceasefire ending, and the world is clamoring for a permanent ceasefire, which would leave Hamas alive to fight another day. But folks, let's remember not only who broke the ceasefire, let's remember who started this in the first place 2 months ago today. Hamas declared war on Israel on October 7th. As a matter of fact, Hamas declared war on Israel in 1987 when Hamas was founded. You might say, what do you mean? Well, Hamas's founding charter was literally a declaration of war against the world's one and only Jewish state. What announcement to the world. In 1987, Hamas said, yes, we exist to destroy Israel. We exist so that Israel will not exist ever again. The very founding of Hamas was a declaration of war against Israel. And in case you had any doubt, that war was certainly made official on October 7th when some 3,000 Hamas terrorists swarmed over the border and invaded southern Israel, joined, someone told me the other day, an Israeli I interviewed who lives in southern Israel. He's evacuated now, but he was there. He fought back against Hamas on October 7th. And he said, look, there were thousands of civilians who came in behind those 3,000 Hamas jihadists. He said he saw an old man with a cane crossing the border to loot and pillage those innocent civilians in Gaza. Yes, there are innocent civilians in Gaza. I'm not saying everyone in Gaza is a Hamas sympathizer, but there's a good chunk of Hamas sympathizers in the Strip. I know not everyone. I know not every Palestinian civilian feels that way, and I know many don't want to be under the tyrannical yoke of Hamas. But folks, many do. Not just a few, many in Gaza do support Hamas. Many. Don't buy what the Biden administration is telling you and others in the West. They give you the impression that it's just Hamas and just a smattering of people follow Hamas. No, there is widespread and popular support for Hamas in Gaza. There has been for years and years. That's why Hamas was elected by the people of Gaza in 2006. But yes, certainly not every Gazan feels that way. And yes, certainly in the wake of October 7th, you would think that some Gazans who have common sense would say, this isn't for me. Hamas is making my life miserable and bringing literally the wrath of God down upon our heads. So you would think that the ranks of those who do not support Hamas have grown in Gaza since October 7th, since Israel began to put the squeeze on Hamas and is in the process of destroying Hamas decisively once and for all. But polls were taken in the past week. I shouldn't say polls, a survey that in the West Bank, for instance, which we call Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel, in the West Bank, a majority of Palestinians there support what happened on October 7th. Speaking of supporting what happened on October 7th, folks, here's something for you. And we've been talking a bunch here. I'm going to pull this up so I can quote from it directly because it's really quite stunning. We've been talking a bunch here on the Watchmen. As I scroll through, there we have it from the New York Post. We've been talking a bunch here on the Watchmen over the weeks, obviously over the past 2 months, really since October 7th, about this sickening, disheartening, disturbing, and horrifying Hamas support movement in the United States, where I'm sitting right now, and across the Western world. This is not only pro-Palestinian, quote unquote. This is pro-Hamas, and it's rabidly, viciously anti-Semitic. And in major cities throughout the Western world, we've seen tens of thousands of pro-Hamas marchers shouting anti-Semitic genocidal slogans. That's everywhere from New York City to London to Australia to Germany, France, and beyond. We have a problem. The barbarians are not just at the gates, they are inside the gates. And the main incubator for all of this has been, you guessed it, the American college campus, where we've seen genocidal rhetoric at some of what were considered, at least, America's leading academic lights. The Ivy League, that used to be the pinnacle you could reach. Hey, my kid's going Ivy League. He's going, or he or she is going to an Ivy League school. Wow, brilliant. He or she can punch their ticket the rest of their lives. Ivy League. Well, here's what's going on in the Ivy League schools today. Rabid pro-Hamas anti-Semitic propaganda where Kids are shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which means murdering the Jews. And it means in Ivy League institutions like Harvard, the University of Pennsylvania, etc., when Jewish students and any students with any sort of moral clarity have posted photos of the Israeli hostages calling for them to come home, you've seen these pro-Hamas students tear down the pictures and say that Israel's a real war criminal here. What about the Palestinians? Folks, look, when I was in college, 18, 19, 20, 21, yeah, I did dumb stuff at times, and I didn't know the Lord, so I did even dumber stuff. Let's just say that. But I knew the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. These aren't just some misguided young kids kind of flirting with radical ideologies. No, they know exactly what Hamas did on October 7th. Why? Because Hamas captured the footage on their phones, on WhatsApp, on GoPro cameras, and beamed it out to the world. You saw what they did. They raped, murdered, and pillaged, including little babies and infants and the elderly. And they dragged close to 300 more people, civilians, into captivity in Gaza. So these college kids, young men and women, they know exactly what they're supporting. There's no excuse. I guess Hamas is just part of the big social justice movement in the eyes of these college students. Nevertheless, I bring this up for two reasons. Number one, we talked about this. Well, number one, we have a moral rot here in the West. There is a sickness here in the West now, clearly. These are not small numbers of people. It's not a lunatic fringe. We're seeing this in cities nationwide in the United States, in colleges, universities nationwide, and we're seeing it throughout Western Europe. When nations turn away from God, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible, they will turn in the wrong direction and embrace the wrong things, the wrong lines of thinking, the wrong ideologies. We have a generation of young people now that's been completely warped, here in America, I'm speaking at least, by our public education system and our universities. If you had any doubt, and we talked about this on yesterday's live stream, what about that testimony 2 days ago on Capitol Hill before members of Congress when the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn, arguably the three most exclusive universities in the United States, could not say whether calls to murder all Jews constituted a breach of their codes of conduct. They couldn't say it. They wriggled and wiggled, and they said, well, if the calls for genocide become, there has to be context. And I'm quoting, if those calls for genocide become physical and the person calling for the genocide actually tries to carry out genocide, then yes, that is probably considered harassment by our university. You think? Folks, this is really happening. In 2023, this is happening. Go back if you haven't seen it. Do an internet search. A lot of it was on X, formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. The clip is everywhere. It's about 3 minutes, 30 seconds long, I believe. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York is grilling the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn. And folks, I kid you not, they literally cannot say whether calls for genocide against the Jewish people constitute harassment and violate their school's codes of conduct. It was the Twilight Zone. And they were smiling as they said it. I said it the other day, I'll say it again. We live in times where good is called evil and evil is called good, as laid out by the prophet Isaiah. These are Bible times. These are prophetic times. And now these university presidents are walking back their absolutely disastrous testimonies. They should be fired. Let's see if they are. I'm sure some high-level donors weren't very happy about that testimony the other day, but now they're issuing statements, walking it back and saying, look, we were basically misconstrued. We condemn genocide. That's where we're at. And I bring that up for another reason. We're talking about the West and what's going on in the West and here in the United States where I'm sitting right now. Have you ever heard of an organization called the Council on American Islamic Relations? CAIR, C-A-I-R for short. Now, I've reported a bunch on the Muslim Brotherhood. And by the way, Hamas is the self-declared Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. So that gives you an idea of what the Muslim Brotherhood's all about. But there are many Islamic organizations in the United States and Europe that have been labeled as Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers and support organizations, I guess you would say. So here's one from Nihad Awad, who is the executive director and co-founder of this organization, CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Now, mind you, in 1994, Nihad Awad was captured on camera saying, quote, "I am in support of the Hamas movement." That's for starters. Here's what he said on November 24th at the 16th Annual Convention for Palestine in the United States, which was held somewhere here in the United States. I'm not sure where. Here's what Nihad Awad, again, executive director, co-founder of an organization that bills itself, I believe, as an Islamic American civil rights organization. They've CAIR members and leaders in the past have been at the White House for high-level meetings, other branches of the U.S. government. Here's what he said about October 7th, and I quote, "The people of Gaza," I'm just reading this from my phone, this is the New York Post reporting this verbatim, "the people of Gaza only decided to break the siege, the walls of the concentration camp on October 7th, said Awad. And yes," and I quote, "I was happy to see people breaking the siege and throwing down the shackles of their own land and walking free into their land that they were not free to walk in." He was happy to see the October 7th attacks. I'm not misquoting him. "I was happy to see people doing this." He continued, "And yes, the people of Gaza have the right to self-defense. They have the right to defend themselves. And yes, Israel does not have that right to self-defense." Oh, really? Here we go. The convention was held on November 24th and 25th outside Chicago, Illinois. The footage was posted publicly by a group called American Muslims for Palestine last weekend. And Awad, it says, went on to accuse the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC for short, of controlling the U.S. government. Those Jews, those pesky Jews controlling everything, those Zionists. Here you go again. So this is Nihad Awad, leader of, again, a well-known American Muslim organization supporting the October 7th massacre. Wow. Where's the outrage? Where are the condemnations? Look, again, Nihad Awad himself, I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be shocked if over the years he's been a guest at the White House under a Democrat administration. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know, but I'm almost certain that CAIR members, officials have been at the White House for meetings over the years or events, maybe not even a meeting, maybe an event, maybe an iftar dinner, something like that. Maybe CAIR members, leaders have been on the guest list. But that's the state of play in 2023, right outside of Chicago, Illinois, calls for support for what happened on October 7th. I wanted to share that with you just so you know it's not just happening over there. No. If you're sitting there right now and you're watching and you're thinking, man, you know, that's a tough break for Israel. Really horrible what happened. But that's thousands of miles away. It doesn't affect me sitting here or at Harvard in my ivory tower or wherever you are. It does affect you. What happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East, and events unfolding there right now will profoundly affect all of us, no matter where we live. How do I know that? Because the Bible is quite clear about that. And yes, this is news from a biblical perspective, unapologetically and proudly. And if you like what you hear, and you're just stumbling upon the channel and you never have subscribed, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Hey, We're fast approaching 1 million subscribers here, which is crazy in a good way, and all glory to God about it. And I mentioned the statistic yesterday. It still stuns me. Some 72% of our regular viewers are not subscribed. Hey, it's completely free. Click that subscribe button. Join us here every day as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. It's important not for my edification or my glory. Wow, look at all the subscribers I have. No, it's important because that means YouTube, these algorithms, everything else will pump that video out around the world. And why is that important? Because we are sharing a message of biblical truth in times where we're seeing a whole lot of deceit and falsehood. We want to get this message out far and wide. So you can help us do that when you subscribe. We appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up, all that good stuff. And this is all, today's Hanukkah, by the way. Today is the beginning of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to everyone. And all of this is unfolding, obviously, around Hanukkah and during the Christmas season. And one of the things that unfolded today on the first day of Hanukkah was Hezbollah firing an anti-tank missile, which killed one Israeli civilian. Now, Hezbollah, can we say in layman's terms, they've been asking for it? I guess that's a simplistic way to say. Listen, we've been talking about this, folks, for weeks and weeks now. Watch the northern front. Watch the Hezbollah front. Watch that second front. Now another civilian's been killed in a Hezbollah missile attack in the north. As Israel is well on its way to crushing Hamas in the south, it looms to the north. The battle looms there. The Great Northern War looms there. We've seen 11, I believe it was 11 or 12 Israeli soldiers wounded the other day in a Hezbollah attack along that Lebanon-Israel border. Now we have an Israeli civilian killed, murdered in a Hezbollah terror attack along that border today. I say all that to say, I don't know how much longer Israel can hold off and not act in a major, major way against Hezbollah. Look, Israel has reportedly killed over 100 Hezbollah terrorists since October 7th in these daily exchanges along the Israel-Lebanon border. But the ultimate goal, and I reported this on yesterday's live stream, as stated yesterday by Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, in order for the evacuated communities in northern Israel to return to those communities, places like Metula along that Lebanon border, he said, Israel's top defense official, that Israel is going to have to push Hezbollah back from the border beyond the Litani River, which is some 18 miles, I believe, north of that Israel-Lebanon border. He said, look, ideally the UN will fulfill what it's supposed to do and push them back, and the UN won't do that through physical force. So you and I both know, everyone watching, the thousands with us right now, and me, myself, we know that Israel is going to have a showdown with Hezbollah there. I've called it the Great Northern War. I believe it has prophetic significance. I believe everything unfolding right now in Gaza does as well. I was asked that this morning. We've been doing publicity, I guess you would say, for, speaking of Hanukkah, our Hanukkah special airs tonight on TBN and the TBN app. Why does Hanukkah matter to you? You might say, it's a Jewish holiday. Well, let me tell you something. Not only was Hanukkah a great battle led by the Maccabees for religious freedom, and on behalf of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Hanukkah was a holiday celebrated by Jesus. The Gospel of John, chapter 10, says, yes, Jesus went up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Dedication, which is another name for Hanukkah. My 1 hour special, and look, we were on the ground in Modin, the hometown of the Maccabees, where the Maccabean Hanukkah revolt began, and also in Jerusalem, where the temple was recaptured by the Maccabees and rededicated. That's where the Hanukkah story comes from. 8 days. The oil was only supposed to last for 1 day. It lasted miraculously for 8 whole days, and that's where Hanukkah comes from. Tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on TBN and the TBN app. Hanukkah like you've never heard about it before. You're going to learn a lot. And we have a trailer right now. Daniel, if we can take a look real quick at this trailer for tonight's Hanukkah special. Take a look.
Why does Hanukkah matter, not only for the Jewish people, but for Christians? And why did Jesus celebrate this ancient holiday? Join me on December 7th for a Hanukkah special featuring Rabbi Jason Sobel, Dennis Prager, and more as we commemorate the miraculous Hanukkah story and the triumph of light over darkness. In the midst of Israel's current struggle against evil forces, it's a message that's needed now more than ever, only on TBN.
Hey, folks, it's going to be good tonight. Someone asked in the comments, I'm just looking at our very lively chat, will Danny the Digger Herman be a part of this Hanukkah special? Yes, he will. Danny actually lives in Modine. Danny the Digger Herman, if you watch the Watchmen on a regular basis, you know he's one of our regulars, our dear friend. Danny lives in Modine, the hometown of the Maccabees. He took us to the sites. Really cool stuff. And then in Jerusalem, we learned more about what happened there. That was one of the centers of the Maccabean successful revolt against the Greek Seleucid pagan empire. Dennis Prager joins us as well. Rabbi Jason Sobel. Some great people and some great places on this Hanukkah special tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time on TBN and the TBN app. Hey, we talk about the second front in Hezbollah, and I'd love to get your thoughts. When will Israel strike? How will Israel strike? Because that's coming. But we talked also yesterday about the third front, the Houthis to the south. Quick update there. I argued yesterday that someone has to act against the Houthis. Someone needs to send a message. Someone, meaning either Israel or the United States, because the Houthis in the Red Sea, the Iran-backed Houthis, are targeting, yes, Israel and the United States in the Red Sea region. Someone's got to send a message. It seems that Israel was on the verge of doing so, and now we're hearing reports that the Biden administration, surprise, surprise, is saying to Israel, don't act against the Houthis. We've got it. We'll take care of it. Now, the Biden administration is also telling Israel to the north with Hezbollah, don't broaden the conflict. Don't act in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Don't act in Yemen against the Houthis. Just take it on the chin, Israel. And also in Gaza, don't go all in. Israel is essentially fighting with one arm tied behind its back, thanks to the Biden administration. That's what it seems. And look, I know the administration is sending weapons to Israel, replenishing its stockpiles. I get it. But by the same token, and at the same time, they're saying, don't act, don't go all in. We want a ceasefire. It's a schizophrenic policy by the Biden administration. What will the U.S. do here? Is the U.S. prepared to send a message to the Houthis? Again, someone's going to have to, or the attacks will continue at the behest of the Iranian regime. Speaking of which, Iran's foreign minister said yesterday that, quote, in his words, terrible days lie ahead for Israel. It's interesting because, yes, biblically, the time of Jacob's trouble will come and it will be terrible. But also, terrible days lie ahead for the Iranian regime. And if you read the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, the war of Gog and Magog, funny name, I know, but check it out. It names Persia, that's modern-day Iran, as part of the invasion force. I believe Russia will be a part. I believe Turkey will be a part. A latter days confederation that comes against Israel and is utterly destroyed on the mountains of Israel when the God of Israel directly and divinely intervenes. So yes, terrible days lie ahead, including for Iran's regime, which eventually will be no more. And it may be as a result of that Gog-Magog war. Hey, another thing to mention on a busy news day, have you heard these comments by the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and what he's been saying? Well, number one, a few weeks ago, he said that October 7th, quote, did not happen in a vacuum. Read between the lines, he's saying, look, Israel, you had it coming. You provoked it with the way you treat the Palestinians. So that's the leader of the UN. Now, yesterday, he went a step further. And Israel's foreign minister, Eli Cohen, its UN ambassador, Gilad Erdan, I've interviewed them both in recent months. They're both calling for him to resign, the Secretary General of the UN. They're accusing him of backing Hamas not only for his rhetoric over the weeks, but because yesterday he used a rare clause in the UN Charter. Again, he's the Secretary General of the UN. There's some rare, obscure clause that hasn't been used since 1989. Gutierrez used this to urge the UN Security Council to intervene in the Israel-Hamas war and to demand a ceasefire. He knows what Hamas did on October 7th. He knows that if Israel leaves Hamas alive and kicking and to fight another day, he knows Hamas will attempt to duplicate October 7th, and they may be successful. He should know that Hamas needs to be crushed and taken out of power. And he may know that, but he may not care. His hatred for Israel may be that great that he doesn't care, that he's really not affected by October 7th. He believes Hamas should stay in power, apparently. And if he didn't, he wouldn't call for a total ceasefire right now. And he invokes a rare clause that hasn't been used since 1989 in an attempt to pressure and browbeat Israel into a premature ceasefire, which is essentially a surrender. Because if Israel agrees to that ceasefire, folks, we've talked about this on previous newscasts, not only will Hamas be emboldened to fight another day, but Hezbollah, Iran, it sends the worst possible message to the world's worst possible actors. Here's the good news. Gutierrez, Israel's leaders are united in opposing his madness at Turtle Bay in New York at the UN. And secondly, Israel seems very united, the political military leadership, in terms of seeing this thing through and destroying Hamas and not caving to international pressure. Certainly there's been some caveats and there's been some nods to international pressure, letting the fuel roll into Gaza, the fuel which is certainly being commandeered by Hamas and used probably to launch rockets and for its military machine. So Israel has given some concessions to this relentless international pressure led by the United States. But overall, I'm happy to say thus far, it seems that Israel's leaders are saying, you know what? We're going to see this through. We must, because our very existence depends on it. So, folks, as Hanukkah is upon us, and that was another battle for the very existence of Israel and the Jewish people, very similar parallels in 2023. This may be the most significant Hanukkah that we've seen in centuries, considering what's going down right now. Israel is locked in a battle for its very existence, just as it was during the time of the Maccabees, against tyrannical forces that wish to wipe Israel off the map and destroy their way of life. So to say this is a significant Hanukkah is an understatement. Check out the special tonight for more on this. For you, if you're a Christian, why should you care about Hanukkah? I'm not saying you need to go and celebrate Hanukkah, but you should know of it and you should have a healthy appreciation for it. 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, TBN and the TBN app. Join us right back here. I see some Philadelphians here, people from my hometown of Philadelphia, chiming in a good way on our comments. God bless everyone. Go Eagles, go Sixers. And until tomorrow, thanks so much for joining us here on the live stream. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching.